Get up. Where you?
I'll find you.
Let's see. Okay, so I gave this at Birmingham at the International Peace Conference because Pat had put me in touch with the organizers there. So I'm just going to start. This is it was a peace conference, so we talked about peace in space. So this really has to do with international cooperation and how NASA and the world community is going to explore space. So we can go to the next one. I don't think the clicker works. Yeah. So I've got a couple videos.
Years ago, we went to the moon. We called it Apollo.
What many people don't know is that Apollo had a twin.
She was a woman named Artemis,
goddess of the moon.
We are returning to the moon.
as a new generation of explorers.
This time to stay.
And to prepare to achieve humanity's next journey of sending the first human missions to Mars.
We believe our course will redefine what is possible.
That we would discover life-saving,
Earth-changing science.
And that the challenges ahead will inspire generations.
This is our manifest.
For all who wondered if we could return.
For all who dreamed of pressing beyond.
This is your calling.
we go for all of America.
We go. We go as the Artemis generation.
We go.
So you can see our PR department is pretty good. So I want to talk just a little bit about, most of you guys know this, so I'm not going to spend too much time, but Marshall Space Flight Center is where I just retired from, and we are the chief propulsion center at the agency, but we also kind of fit in these kind of four categories. First is launch. It's been a year. We launched SLS and Orion, uncrewed mission to the moon. I'll show you some pictures from that that are really exciting. We are the center that's responsible for the lander. So there's 2 lander contracts, one with SpaceX, one with Blue Origin. Those guys are starting to move. The live in space, not only are we trying to find habitats on the moon, but we're also trying to figure out how, when we eventually go to Mars, how we support the astronauts and have what we call deep space transport and habitat. And finally, learn. So Marshall is one of the only centers that kind of engages in all the different areas that NASA does: science, human exploration, even a little bit of aerospace and space technology. So we kind of have the largest portfolio. So that's what your neighbors and friends here in town are doing on our side of the arsenal. Next chart. Okay. So a lot of y'all have seen this picture. This was from Apollo 8, taken on Christmas Eve, 1968. It's one of the most famous pictures in the world. So it's the moon and the Earthrise. This next picture is quite similar to that, except it's even further away. So this is a view of Orion, our Orion spacecraft. The picture was taken from a camera sitting out on the edge of the solar array and moon. You can see the Earth there and the moon behind it. This talk was about peace in space, and this kind of gives you an example of there's nothing out there except for where we are, right? It's just void, it's empty. You know, the moon's 250,000 miles away, there's nothing. So the imperative for peace in every aspect of our lives is very important. So that's why we put these pictures in here. So let's go on to the next chart. So I'll talk a little bit about our international partnerships. You guys know International Space Station. We built a lot of that here at NASA. But our international partnerships started from really the beginning of the space program. We had deep space tracking stations all over the world. We cooperate with most of the countries in the world in space. International Space Station, I think it's 26 countries across the globe. Russia, the European Space Agency, and all the European countries, Brazil, other countries. So that is the largest international construction project in the history of mankind. So it's the size of a football field in orbit. Next chart. There you go. I just said all this stuff. It's 357 feet end to end. It weighs nearly 1 million pounds. Required 250 spacewalks. And we've had over 3,600 experiments. And the experiments are not just from those 15 countries that are represented in Space Station, but from a lot of other countries and universities. If you can put together an experiment that you need microgravity, then we'll probably find a way to fly. Next chart. So I want to talk a little bit about the Artemis Accords. So those are international principles that we're getting countries to sign up for to help us have some principles for safe, peaceful, and prosperous future as we explore the moon and on Mars. So I'm not gonna read through this, you guys can read, and I think these charts are gonna be available, so, you know, this is really kind of setting the ground rules for international cooperation based on the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. Next chart. So really the key is peaceful purposes. We want to explore the moon and Mars and the rest of the solar system for peaceful purposes. That's what was laid out in the Outer Space Treaty, but we kind of want to reemphasize that this is what this is about. It may be a little bit of a competition, but we all want to work together for a peaceful purpose and for scientific knowledge. Next. Transparency is very important. You got to make sure both that our science and those things are transparent and available to people. Also, if you've got any operations, you want to deconflict things that are going on. So you want to make sure that people know what's going on in space when you're actually on the surface of the moon or wherever you're operating. I think that's part of the next chart too. Next chart. Interoperability, we want to make sure that our partners and our things work together. I know those of you guys in the defense industry, this is a big deal there too, because you got to make sure that you can talk to each other and do everything. So we're leading that group of folks that are trying to set those standards for interoperability to make sure that we can talk to each other, we know where people are, we know what's going on. Next chart. Emergency assistance, this is like the rule of the sea, right? If somebody has an emergency, people are obligated to help. Go ahead, next. Registration of space objects, we need to know where things are so we can make sure that we don't, we don't have a problem, we don't have interference, you don't try and land on top of somebody else. Again, I talked about this a little bit, release of scientific data. If you want to cooperate with NASA and Artemis Accords, part of the requirement is the scientific data that you generate is open to all. Okay, I think we're getting to the end. Protecting heritage, I'm not going to read through this. Obviously, we've been to the moon before. There are historic heritage sites there. We want to make sure those are protected. Again, if we're gonna get resources from the moon or Mars or whatever to either use there or to bring back to Earth, we want to make sure that's safe, that we all cooperate, and then again, that we follow the rules that everyone signed up to in the Outer Space Treaty. The deconfliction of activities, I've talked about this one. There's a lot of words there, but basically we want to make sure that people don't get in other people's way and we're all safe. Again, we want to make sure that we dispose of orbital debris in a safe, clean way as much as possible. Finally, I think it's the last one. So this is an old chart because I put this together last summer, and these were some of the agencies at that time that signed up. Besides NASA, there was the Italian Space Agency, Australian Space Agency, obviously Canada, Japan, Luxembourg. I think that's UAE, UK. Now, since then, we've probably had about 30 more nations sign up to this. That doesn't mean they're going to participate, but if they do, they're going to follow these accords, they're going to cooperate, they're going to have interoperability, all those other things that we've talked about. Next chart. I think this is another video, so if you hit tab, it'll start. I'm letting our PR department do most of the work here. But these are amazing videos.
And lift off. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
just about everything you saw there has an international partnership. I don't think there's maybe there's one or two things that are there. Even the education things we do, we even have international interns. This is, NASA, although it's our space agency, is really it's a global thing. Next chart. I think this is our last video.
Throughout America's story, there are defining days. Days when minds change, hearts fill, and imaginations soar. Days when visions transform the trajectory of the American story, which is our story. Doing what is hard and achieving what is great, that is what stirs humankind. That's what unites us. With inspiration and innovation, no Herculean effort is too large. No moonshot is beyond our reach.
And liftoff of Artemis 1.
A new generation, the Artemis generation, stands ready. Ready to return humanity to the moon and then to take us further than ever before to Mars. Let us continue the quest to unfold this universe. And let us continue to find unity in our discovery. So together, let us continue to dream the impossible dream that now becomes real. Then let us traverse the untouched terrain of the once unreachable stars.
I love seeing those kids looking at that rocket. And I'll tell you, I had that same look on my face the first time I saw that thing. It's so big. Next chart. I think that wraps us up. Any questions?
When they decommission the space station, will those partnerships roll into the Artemis program, or are those completely separate?
They're different. So what we're going to do is, if and when we decommission the space station, we're setting up a thing called a commercial LEO destinations program. So we're going to have commercial partners build smaller space stations that are pretty much open to anybody. So if you can come up with an experiment, you're willing to pay to get it up there, go for it. So that'll open up, hopefully, that'll open up the world to more people that can have access to space to do work and those kinds of things. Yes, sir.
So when I was a kid growing up, and then during most of my time on active duty as a Marine, there was the Cold War.
Right.
Where is Russia and China in this scheme? And I know there's the science answer, and then there's probably the geopolitical
Right,
answer.
yeah. So I don't know about China, so I haven't got any insight on that. I know we're going to continue to partner with Russia on space station, and then I think we're just going to see where it goes from there. This going to the moon, and especially going out beyond that, is probably too expensive for any one country to do on its own now. I mean, it's so, especially if you want to stay for a long time, and if you want to go and land and come back, you could probably pull that off. But so we'll see. And because we're going to try and open it up to more commercial, okay, you can rent a ride or whatever, at least a space station, to low Earth orbit. That may change the whole dynamic there. We've got, now we're actually doing, I don't know how much it costs, but if you want to be a private astronaut, there's a company in Houston called Axiom that'll train you and send you to space station. They have their own module there, and you can go and be a space station astronaut and do all these other things. So I'm not sure, Bill, how all that's going to play into it and what the world's going to look like 20 years from now when we finally even start thinking about really think about going to Mars. I do think there's probably going to be multiple space stations over the next 10 years, and who knows how they do that. And the science world is a little bit different. I mean, there's a lot more cooperation across those things.
To follow that, I hate kind of asking that question, but how do you handle China as far as registration, debris, all the categories that are
I don't have that much insight in what they're doing there, but I do know that they're talking to them and they understand what's, enough of what's going on to keep us from getting in trouble or or those kinds of, in the civil world. I don't know about the DoD world at all, right? So,
So we're not gonna land on their stuff.
we're not gonna land on their stuff. They're not gonna land on our stuff. They kind of know where those things. And our stuff, it's pretty open. It's like if something happens there, it's deliberate because we are very transparent about where our things are. Yeah.
So probably 90-some% of the United States has no idea we're going back to the moon. When do you start a big?
I think they're trying to start that now. I think the idea is, and because I ran an education program for a while, a lot of it is starting with the kids, is to get the kids involved. There's we have it's quite a big effort in an office called Office of STEM Education, which starts at pre-K and goes all the way through graduate school, and it starts with lesson plans and things. We do a lot of stuff. There's another solar eclipse upcoming, so we're going to spend a lot of money getting things out to schools and training teachers. And start with the school kids and the teachers and work. That's part of it. Obviously, there's got to be a general PR thing. There's also a lot of more stuff going on in the world. There's more things that catch people's attention. So I know we've got a YouTube channel. I don't know any of that stuff. I'm like Bill, like what's an Instagram? But they have all that stuff. We are really trying to work into starting with the younger kids and getting them to get their parents engaged and those kinds of things. I think that's probably, if your kids want to learn about it, you'll go learn about it. I think that's a good strategy, and we'll see where we go from there. We also work with we've got this thing called the Museum Alliance, so we work with a lot of museums. Over the past 5 years, they do a science week on the Intrepid. I don't know if y'all ever been to New York, but there's an Intrepid Air and Sea Museum on the USS Intrepid aircraft carrier, and then we have a big presence there. We go to a lot of these other festivals, South by Southwest, Oshkosh, all those different kinds of things. Any place we can go, but all that costs money, and you got to convince a program manager to give you money to go to Oshkosh, right? And he's like, well, how's that's going to help my mission? So there's a lot of trade-offs there, but engaging universities and those things. Sandy?
Yeah, I kind of a thought question for you. So I had to look back up, but it hasn't changed in 25 years since I was part of NASA too. But so it's 0.5% of the budget goes to NASA, still around $23 billion.
Right.
If they were to go to 0.75% or 1%,
right,
what would you do with the extra money, the new money? Where would you put it in that?
That's a good question. Probably, you could certainly increase production rate of SLS, so you can start cranking out more of those. I would probably figure out some way to, this is just me, so if I was administrator for a day, right?
You're retired, free and clear.
Extend, I think space station probably has a longer life than 2030. So how you do that, and do you start swapping out modules and modernize that as opposed to a bunch of little ones? That's always been a thought in my head. And then there's a lot more on the planetary side, on the deep space exploration side. What can we look at? The scientists always have different things, and and I would put some money into the aeronautics research, what people don't realize. That's the first, that's the first A in NASA. There's a lot of stuff that's come out of there that's really made air travel more efficient. They're trying to redo the air traffic control system so it's more efficient. They're trying to figure out electric propulsion, this low noise supersonic transport. That would probably could use some investment. So those kind of things. Cynthia?
Yeah, we put a lot of stuff up there. How do we get it out of the way?
Some of it you can't. It is where it is. What they do is when space station sees that something's coming, they move it out of the way.
Well, and if you decommission space station, you have a huge chunk of junk.
Right. So there's a plan to actually control deorbit space station. So actually not do the Skylab thing where pieces of it fell on Australia, but actually find a way to do it. So we'll see how that plays out. That'll be, well, it's all against my time now. So
You got more time for rotary now.
I do, hopefully. All right. Any other questions?
Well, yeah, I do have one question. If you're going to be working in Tuscaloosa,
yeah, I'll be commuting for a while.
oh, okay. So we will see you.
You will see me, and I'm trying to. And one of my jobs is, I don't know if y'all have seen the big Auburn building sitting over there in Research Park. One of my jobs is to figure out if we need to open up have a physical presence here in town. So, we'll see how that plays out.
Just put it in Madison.
Well, Auburn got a really good deal on that building. That's why they have it. So,
Yeah, in spite of their bowl game performance, Auburn's got a really good backing. Thanks, Rajiv.
Thanks, everybody.